Okay, hello, it's that time of year again. We're back for our pre-Pesach classes. So we're going to have this, we'll have two classes in the series this year, go through a number of different things, but of course, as always, you can ask your questions throughout the class, and you can always call me too, anytime. You know, my cell number is published on the website and on the bulletin, so I'm always available. Why don't we start? The first thing, question that often comes up, let's in regard to foods that you purchase. So you have foods that you purchase that are, of course, everything would be kosher, but some of the times they need a special certification for Pesach, right, for Passover, because it has to be not only kosher, but it has to be kosher for Passover. So in order to do so, you have foods that require this special added hashgacha. Now there are some foods that don't need it. And even though you can find them certified as kosher for Passover, there's no need to purchase that one. You can purchase it without it. Certainly there's nothing wrong with purchasing it, other than it might be more expensive. But let's go through a few and we'll get an idea. So some of the things that of course need special hashgacha would be anything that has any type of chametz in it, or that has any type of kitnios. Kitnios are legumes, peas, and the like, which Ashkenazim do not eat on Passover. Even though that's rabbinic law, we follow that totally, and therefore anything that would have those types of things in it would need special certification. Now what lies as an issue are areas that clearly you have no interest in these things having chametz in it or kitnios in it, but they might. So an example would be orange juice. So regular orange juice that you get in a container, right, like you buy in a milk bottle kind of thing. So those need to have hashgacha for Pesach, and it's really for two reasons. One is the chemicals, the vitamins that they put in when they enrich a lot of these things. For instance, the most common enriched liquid that we drink would be milk, and it's enriched with vitamins. One of those vitamins is vitamin D. Vitamin D is chametz, and therefore milk has to be certified kosher for Passover in order for you to be able to use it, because it has that in it. Now that also applies to other drinks. So since we're not sure, for instance, where if something is made, where it could have a mixture, something is made and it's fortified, where it could have vitamin D or other additives that might be chametz. So therefore we have to have them certified as kosher for Passover. So when you go into the store and you look for your Tropicana or your Minute Maid in the containers fresh, so they have to be certified for Passover. What does not need to be certified for Passover is frozen orange juice from concentrate. If you just buy one that's kosher, as long as it's a kosher brand, all of the regular orange juice that is from concentrate, right? You take it out of the freezer, you add 3 cups of water, and you make orange juice. Those are kosher for Pesach. And you don't need special Passover certification, and you will find it with it. But if you find it without it, that is certified kosher, but does not say for Passover, and it's cheaper, you should buy the one that's cheaper. Save yourself a couple of cents. Yes?
And then with lactose milk, as long as you buy it before Pesach?
Okay, so lactose milk, the issue with lactose milk is really kitnios. And really, the one that's the best to use are the drops, right? The lactose drops rather than the milk, because it's the lactose drops are specifically kitnios. The lactose milk is questionable and may have chametz. So it's true that if you buy it before Passover, it becomes batel and you'd be allowed to drink it. It's preferable, if you can, to do it with the drops, right? Have you used the drops? You know what I mean? So the lactate milk basically has within it a chemical that makes it possible for people who can't digest it, they can, right? So it comes in the milk already, or you can buy it in pill form, or you can buy it in drop form. And in pill form, you swallow, you chew the pill and swallow it, and then you can eat whatever you want with dairy, and you'll be able to digest it. That you can't use on Pesach because those pills are chametz. But the drops are only kitnios. So therefore, really, the best thing to use would be that if you need to.
So the lactose drops are keeping you up, but you can use them?
Because the other ones are questionable that they're chametz. In fact, I happen to be looking on that question right here in this Passover guide from the COR, who've done an excellent job this year in all types of things, including things that you need certification, things that don't need certification. And one of the areas that they always talk about each year is just this, the lactate milk. I'll find it, and they specify exactly what's what. So I'll just take a moment and I'll show you. So here it says lactate and lactate extra strength tablets, right? Those are chametz. The tablets are chametz, and you should use the drops instead. So then when it comes to actually the milk, they have a description of it in here.
Where'd you get the book from?
In every building, including here. There's a couple left downstairs, I saw.
Sobeys has dozens of them.
Yeah, Sobeys has quite a few. I'll find it for you later, exactly why. But the preferred one is to use, here it says, lactate tablets, cablets, and drops should not be used on Passover. Lactase drops, which can be purchased at most pharmacies, and lactase milk do not contain chametz. They do contain kitnius. And then you should consult your rabbi if you need to use the drops or the milk. In great need, you should buy it before Passover, like you said. So that's really the idea. It's preferable not to use anything with kitnius. If you have a need for the milk and you have no other milk you can drink and it's necessary, then you'd be allowed to use the one with kitnius, but you have to buy it before Passover. Now this idea of buying certain things before Passover is actually an important point. It's important to know. What happens is as follows, is that sometimes you have within a food a mixture of other things. And sometimes other things could be chametz and they could be kitnius. Like you could have milk and they put, when they put in the enzyme so that you could digest the milk, that is made from legumes. That's where it comes from. So therefore you really can't use it. But the point is there's so little of it in there compared to the amount of milk, just a few drops in the whole thing of milk, that really it becomes batel. Now batel is a Hebrew word that means as if it doesn't exist. And if you have 1 ounce in 60 ounces, that's considered non-existent. That's for anything. If you would have, for instance, an ounce of, let's say you had some type of a meal, and you would say 200 meatballs, and 2 meatballs fell in that had chametz in them, right? So they would be batel. They were as if they're non-existent. However, there's certain exclusions to this rule. One of those rules is if it's during Passover itself, and you acquire it during Passover, which means you own chametz on Passover, it does not become batel. It does not happen. If you buy it before Passover, so chametz and kitnius are permissible, right? You could eat chametz and kitnius, right? You can have a bagel today. So it's permissible. So therefore, in this case, it becomes as if it doesn't exist. But as soon as it becomes a forbidden object, then it does not become batel. So if I said it clear enough, the idea is that if you buy it before Passover, it becomes non-existent. Right? The kitnius that's inside of it. If you buy it on Passover, it does not. So this applies also for people who live in small towns where you can't get kosher milk.
Can you give a practical example of that?
Yeah, okay, I do it with milk.
You buy milk?
So let's say you walk into the store, right, and you buy a regular container of milk, not kosher Passover, just a regular container of milk. So that milk has vitamin D. Vitamin D is chametz. So now here it's not Passover yet, right? It's 3 days before Passover, and you bought this milk. So there's so little chametz in the milk that if you bought it before Passover, that chametz is as if it doesn't exist. It's so little compared to the amount of milk. This applies everywhere in Jewish law, this idea of something not existent. So it's applying here as well. However, if you would buy that milk on Passover, it would not become like it's not existent, because when you bought it, it was already forbidden to use. When you bought the milk before Passover, you can drink that milk before Passover. There's nothing wrong with it. But on Passover, it becomes chametz. So in that case, it would become, you could use it. But if you buy it on Passover, you can't. Is that better?
Each product you have to basically ask your rabbi, because how do you know how much is in it?
There's only in a case where you've purchased something that's not kosher for Passover, right? You should be buying kosher for Passover. Every once in a while, there's an object that's not made, like lactase milk. If you need that kind of milk, right, or certain drugs, certain antacids, they will have this issue. It's not common. But when it happens, and you have to have it, like when I grew up in a small town, we could not get kosher for Passover milk. It just wasn't available, and therefore we would all go to the store before Passover and buy regular milk, and then it became the chametz in the milk as if it didn't exist before Passover, and then on Passover it stayed that way. So we were allowed to do that. Today, since it is available, it's much preferable not to do that. And it's only if, let's say, you would, the day before Passover something happens and there's no kosher milk in the city, so then you could buy regular milk, and it wouldn't have to be kosher for Passover, and you could use it. But if you run out on Passover, you can't do this. So you can't go and buy it. Okay? You had a question, Tal?
No, I was just going to let you clarify.
Okay. So I was just happened to be looking in here, and they went through a whole bunch of things that also they said that do not require kosher supervision. One of the examples that I gave you of orange juice, that's one that's been for many years. But that's an example that they give that shows it. Things that do not need special certification. Now, another area for that is our objects like paper plates, styrofoam plates, plastic plates, cups, and napkins. Literally, they're not made out of chametz. Right? They're made out of paper, plastic, and so forth. The problem with paper is that paper often uses starch in order to make it stronger, so it doesn't bend when you put food on it. And that starch, right, can be kitnias or it can be chametz. So people are advised to use plastic or styrofoam rather than paper. You're allowed to use paper, but it is preferable not to use it with liquids, because as soon as you put liquid on it, then the liquid can liquefy the starch, the hot liquid, and then you'll have a problem with the food. But so plastic and styrofoam are preferable with all paper goods, and then you don't need kosher ones. Like you will go in the store, you will find plasticware and you will find styrofoam all marked kosher Passover. You do not need to buy that. If you want to buy paper plates, it's preferable to get kosher for Passover so that this issue with the starch isn't a reality, but it's no need to buy it otherwise. There's a whole list of that type of stuff, yes.
Is there starch in the napkins also, like paper napkins?
Usually they only put it sometimes in the fancy ones, like in the more expensive ones, the dinner napkins. So it's the same thing. If you can use ones that are marked kosher for Passover without a problem. The other ones, if you bought them before Passover, you could use them. It's just preferable not to if you're not stuck. Okay, that applies with all of those types of things. The same thing with, I know I'm skipping around a little bit, but I'm using a different thread. So another similar thread is with cosmetics. So when it comes to things like shampoos and deodorants and this type of stuff, so you'll find all of this kosher for Passover. Every single one of these things you'll find kosher for Passover. Dishwashing detergent, washing dishes in a machine, washing it by hand, they all have stuff kosher for Passover. And yes, but you don't need to.
It says if it has the kosher symbol, you can use it.
Right, well, because you don't need special kosher for Passover for those things. Shampoo doesn't need it. There are some shampoos that have wheat in it, right, or beer, right, as some additive. So you should stay away from those. But in general, you don't need it. Excuse me? Did someone say something? No?
Makeup?
So makeup's a little bit more to it because of like we have here. There are many brands that everything is fine, like Revlon. Everything Revlon makes, they're fine. Right? There's a whole list here in this booklet of them, but in general, the problems with makeups primarily are not chametz. The problem is using them on Passover because of the holidays. Because on Shabbat and on a holiday, you're not allowed to smear makeup. So you got to put it on beforehand, but it could be a couple of days, right? It's not so easy. But as far as the Pesach side is concerned, because it's not edible, your cosmetics are not edible, and therefore even if they would have something in them, you'd be allowed to use it. Because one of the rules is that it has to be in order for chametz to be called chametz, it has to be something that at least a dog would eat. And I would venture to guess that if a dog tasted your cosmetics, they would not eat it, because they usually don't taste very good. So that's the case. Now the area of concern is lipstick. You can use not kosher Passover lipstick, but you need to use a new one. You have to start a new one, because what could have been in your mouth, even though chances are nothing, but you should use a new one. And there's all types of dishwasher detergents, cleansers, aftershaves, fragrances, perfumes, all of these types of things really can be used. The world is primarily a bit stricter, and they try to, whenever it's possible, to find one that is kosher for Passover. They'll use it, but it's not really a requirement. So, for instance, if you would come across, I see an example in here, deodorant. So deodorant in general is kosher for Passover. Nobody would eat it. Right? An animal wouldn't eat it, and therefore that's the case. However, some people are strict and they don't want to make use of anything that has chametz. So there are certain brands that don't use the alcohol made from grain. They use alcohol that's made from wood, and therefore that would be permissible. So there's a list here, like with deodorants, you've got Mitchum, Lady Mitchum, Menon. These are all ones that are kosher for Passover, literally kosher for Passover, and they don't say it. But you don't necessarily even have to buy those. But if you want to be strict, if you use those, it's preferable. Toothpaste in general is kitnius. So you need kosher for Passover toothpaste, especially since you put it in your mouth. Mouthwash, on the other hand, there are many brands of mouthwash that are kosher for Passover that are not certified as kosher for Passover. I'll give you a few examples just from here. I usually use a different list, so I'm not as used to this one, as this came out today.
Listerine is on there.
Yeah, he's got a whole bunch of mouthwashes, laxatives, vitamins. Well, they have a list of various ones that you can use, and Listerine, regular, Cool Mint, Fresh Burst, and Tartar Control are all kosher. Passover, they don't say it. So you can use those. As far as toothpaste, you need a kosher one that's kosher for Passover because many of them are kitnius, but many of them are kosher for Passover anyways. For instance, Colgate regular is 100% fine. Colgate gel is fine. What other brands?
That has kitnius?
No, they're 100% fine. They are kosher for Passover without saying it.
So do you still need to start a new one if you're already using those?
It's preferable to always to start a new one. A new toothbrush for sure, because the whole purpose of a toothbrush is to take food out of your mouth. So you have things on there. Okay. Another similar thing, and then we'll go back to the order here, is infant formula. Infant formula is almost exclusively kitnius. Almost all of it is kitnius, but that's all a kid can eat, right? So if you have a baby and the baby is using formula, so there are some that are actually kosher for Passover, but in general, the ones that are kitnius, that is, they're not chametz, they're actually just kitnius, you can use them. You just have to keep it separate from your other items, right? So you don't want to mix. Like when you wash your bottles, you don't want to wash your bottles with your Passover dishes because there is kitnius, there is in it. So you have to wash them separately, but you're allowed to use them because the baby needs it. Yes.
Can you wash it in like your kitchen sink, or you have to do it like in
You could. You could use a special. Usually, what people will do with most sinks, they either kosher the sink for Passover. When it's more common that they use Tupperware liners. They put like a Tupperware bin into their sink, and that way you have one for meat, one for milk, and you just take it out and you can switch. So then you would then just use the sink rather than the liner, right, for the kitnius. Otherwise, you could use it in the sink, but you'd use it with cold water if it was going to go into the areas of the sink that you use. Or, but if you were using a tub, you would just take the tub away and you could do it with hot water. Okay, dishwashers themselves are the regular dishwashers most of us have in our homes. We can't really kosher for Passover. If you have a stainless steel inside, not outside, a lot of people have outside, but inside, those can be koshered, but the amount of effort is really not worth it because for instance, your racks, even the stainless steel one, are not stainless steel. They're usually rubber coated, and that means you have to get new racks. So since a dishwasher costs around $300 now, it's cheaper to buy a new one if you really wanted it. Yes.
What if you want to use it as a drying rack?
Your dishwasher?
Yeah.
So as long as you hadn't used it in 24 hours and it's clean, you could do it if the dishes aren't hot enough that you wouldn't be able to hold them. If they were just warm, that's fine. But if you couldn't keep it in your hand, then they will draw the chametz out of the dishwasher into the dishes. Okay. Yes.
Our dishwasher is stainless steel, and we do have separate racks. So how do I kasher for Pesach.
So if you have all of that, then you clean it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just normal cleaning.
Right.
Take all the stuff out of it, and then you wait 24 hours without using chametz in it, and run it twice with soap, and then you're fine.
Right. Thanks.
Okay. So let's go back. We talked about milk products. Okay. So storage. People ask me this every time, and it's usually just because they get a little bit nervous. You can buy Passover food, even if it's on a shelf with non-Passover food. Right? That's until recently. That's the only way you used to be able to buy it. You'd walk into the store, you'd go through all of the things until you found one that was Passover. Now, in a place like here, where so many people keep Passover, they capitalize on that. But it used to be you just went into a regular place and you look. This one's not kosher. This one's kosher. This one's kosher for Passover, and you take that one. The same thing with bringing it home. You don't have to keep them like a can or objects like that. You don't have to keep them separate because they're closed, they're sealed, or they're frozen. So you don't want to put like a loaf of bread on top of your frozen chicken, but you don't have to like find a special freezer or special places to keep it. They're all closed and sealed.
Sorry,
Yes?
I can ask one more question. So when you buy your kosher Pesach food, your fridge doesn't have to be kosher before you bring stuff home?
No,
You just start
unless you're going to actually have open food in there. No, you wouldn't have to. A sealed container of cheese.
packaging around it
A sealed
everything.
container of cheese is going to be sealed no matter what you do.
You don't have to like wipe it off before you...
Well, you certainly don't want to have any food on it, right? But you look and see. It's just that it's no different than when you get the food, right? The store doesn't keep
Right.
it in a separate place. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You don't really have to. We'll get now to your kitchen and how you deal with that as well. So let's take a look at that. When we talk about your kitchen, so it comes to counters. So there are some type of counters that can be koshered, and there's some types that can't be koshered. So if you have one of the ones that can, for instance, granite can be koshered. Formica, like this, cannot be koshered. That stone conglomerate that they sell, I forgot the word for it now, where it's like granite but it's man-made, that also cannot be koshered. So when you're dealing with what can be koshered, you can simply take boiling hot water from a teapot and pouring on it, and it becomes kosher. That's 100% fine. If you want, of course, you can cover it, but you don't need to cover it if it's something like granite, because it's fine. Granite does not absorb. You just want to make sure it's clean, and you're fine just the way it is. So if you have a fancy kitchen with granite, that's okay. If you have it like this, you have to cover it.
What about having a porcelain backsplash behind? Does the backsplash have?
Yeah, we'll have to do that one separately. I'll get to it. So then you have after your counters, we have your refrigerator. Yes.
Sorry, what do you have to cover it with? Like how thick?
So you can cover it with aluminum foil is sufficient. If you wanted, you could use contact paper, like they use the shelf lining, they call it. Or you can, a very good thing to use is the corrugated plastic. It's about that thick, it's very thin, and it's very light, and you can have somebody make it, you can go and buy it, or you could have someone cut it for you to fit your counters perfectly, and you can just stand them up together and put it in a closet, and it stays there the whole year, and they're fine, and they wipe down very easily. So they're very good to use if you need to put something on the counter. But certainly aluminum foil is sufficient. That's just the hardest to do, right? Because you got to cut it and tape it, but that's what most people use. The refrigerator is people make a lot of mistakes with the refrigerator. The refrigerator is basically you have to clean it. You have to take the comments out. You have to clean it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to line it. Right? You have to make sure there's no food in it, but you don't have to line it. If you line it, you can break your refrigerator. It's important to keep that in mind. The way your refrigerator works is by air circulating throughout the inside of the refrigerator. That's why you'll notice holes in all of the like racks on it, so that the air circulates. When you cover it with aluminum foil, the air will not circulate. It won't cool correctly, and it'll run all the time, and you can burn it out. So the idea is you just have to clean your refrigerator. If you want to put in some things, you don't have to do a lot. You can just put in a piece of aluminum foil if you like, but you don't even need that, as long as it's really clean. That means you have to make sure that if there's ridges or there's corners that you've checked under there, that there's no chametz. But if you have, and it's fine, there's nothing else you have to do. You don't cook with your refrigerator, so you don't have all of those other laws that you would have with your oven. Okay, so don't overdo it with your refrigerator. Yes.
Is it possible at all to, like, if you wanted to keep, like, I live with other people in the house who don't really care necessarily. If I could use the one shelf, and that would be my shelf, and cover the other things and sell them. Like, is that possible?
You should use the top shelf, so
Right.
nothing falls on it.
Right.
And you should put it in a way that you don't see the other items.
Okay.
Right? And that none of it's yours, of course.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, now, your stove now has there are many different things. There's basically 3 types of stoves and ovens in the world. There is self-cleaning ovens, there's continuous cleaning ovens, and there's manual cleaning ovens. Those are basically the 3 types that there are. The continuous cleaning oven is a misnomer. It is not cleaning all the time. And so actually it's probably the worst one to have as far as Passover is concerned. Because basically when you have a manual oven, so you have to clean it. You take out your oven cleaner and you clean it, right? Well, I'll tell you the next stage when we go through all of them. When you have that's a manual. You have to clean it like we always used to do. You have a self-cleaning one, so that means you close the door, you press the button to self-clean, and that cleans it. It's the same as if you cleaned it. A continuous cleaning oven, you can't tell it to self-clean. It's supposed to be doing it all the time itself, but it's not doing it in the same way that we're used to, that we think of it. So therefore, if you have a continuous cleaning oven, you have to clean it as if it was a manual oven. That means you have to put in all of the stuff and the smell, that smelly acid, and clean it. That's step 1. With all 3 ovens now, you then have to make sure, that everything in it is not only cleaned as I just described, but it has to be clean. There can't be any food or any crumbs or anything like that in there. There can't be anything hidden like in corners or underneath a lip. That all has to be clean. And then after that point, you can then you can use your oven. Right? It's a matter of you turn on your oven at that point, you heat it up to the highest temperature it can go, and after it's gotten to that temperature, you wait a few minutes, you can turn it off, and it's finished.
You don't have to wait to start your Pesach cooking. As soon as it cools down, you can start using.
Yeah, right, as soon as it's cold.
Yeah.
Because you've already done the cleaning,
Right.
and then after you finish the cleaning, you then heated it up again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then after that, it's fine to use. Yes.
What about the rack inside?
So the racks inside have to be totally clean. If you can't clean them totally, even though it wouldn't be considered food, then the racks you would most likely either replace or kosher or cover. Now, to cover them is easy, aluminum foil. You also make sure, though, that you put some holes in it for the same reason as the refrigerator, or your food won't cook correctly, because your oven presumes when it sets the temperature, and all your recipes presume that the air is circulating. So if you cover up all of the racks totally, your recipes won't come out right. So you have to put some holes in it if you cover it. If you kosher it, so the way the koshering of those racks has to be with a heat source, which means like a blowtorch, not really a blowtorch, but like they have these torches that you can buy for your house, and you'd have to use that to heat it up. That's if you wanted to kosher it, or you replace it. Any one of those 3. If you leave them inside the oven when you kosher the oven, you've koshered them.
When
Okay.
it's self-clean, you don't have to then turn on the temperature on high. That is the cleaning.
Yeah, it's true. In that case, it would do both. Okay, so now the stove top. So there's a few different types of stove tops now. You have a gas stove top, you have an electric stove top, and then you have a flat top. And even the flat top, there's a few different types. But so gas and electric, basically the rules are the same, which is any area of the stove top where food could have been put or could have spilt has to be koshered. It's not really easy to kosher the top of your stove, right? I mean, it's hard to do. So most often people do is they will clean it thoroughly, they'll put boiling water on it, and they cover it with aluminum foil. You cover the top of your stove with aluminum foil. That's if it's then when it comes to the actual burners and the racks that the pots sit on, so the round things that go around them usually, they're decorative, they're like a shiny silver or something. What?
Cover them or buy new
The
ones.
rims? Yeah. So those you really should replace because there's lips underneath them that catch a lot of food, and they're very inexpensive. The rack that it sits on, right, that's actually inside of the burner is sitting on. So if it's the burner itself, When you turn it, and later on when I tell you about koshering it, that'll take care of it. But if it's not the burner, like it's gas, and you have the gas flames coming, and you have an iron thing in the middle, so that also you would have to clean and kosher. You can put that inside of your oven when you self-clean your oven, and that will kosher them. So that you wouldn't have to replace those if you do that. If you have a cooktop, flat cooktop, so what you do there is you should clean it. You should not use it for 24 hours, and then you should put boiling water on it. And you need to be careful because you don't want to crack the glass. So number one is you do not cover it. Do not cover that top.
But the boiling water can't crack it.
I've never seen it do that. I've read that people should be careful, but I've never heard of it happening. But it will happen if you put aluminum foil on your stove top, thinking that that'll be preferred as it was on your gas or your electric, and that will cause your stove top to crack. So you should not do that. It won't work. It's just if you put it on there before Yom Tov starts, by the time it's over, you don't have a stove top. So don't do that. You should kosher it the way I said with the boiling water after you've cleaned it and waited 24 hours.
Now the boiling water, does it have to be, how when you do the counters, the water has to be a continuous boil with
Well, it would have to be when you begin the process, right? It has to be that hot. And as you're doing it, of course, it gets cooler. Okay. So that's your stove and your oven. Two different things, right? That actually relatively easy. Is the parts that you're going to keep and you're going to use, if they're made out of metal, like I said, put them inside your oven when you clean your oven, self-clean. It'll take care of everything in there. Yes.
And that's it for the stove top? That's it, so I don't cover it and I can use it?
No, the stove top, like the flat one, yeah, you can't cover it. So the only thing you do is you wait 24 hours, you put the boiling water on it, and then you clean it.
And I can use it?
And you can use it.
Now, why does everyone say, oh, you don't want those or not?
Because there was an opinion that that people said that you couldn't kosher them at all. But I don't know where it came from, and there are people who knew more than I do, but I don't know that opinion, and I wasn't taught it. But I know that when I came here, I met rabbis who taught their congregants that they couldn't use them. So that's where it came from. A microwave oven, so they used to be considered very simple to do, and that there's nothing to it. And they are easy to kosher. It's just that because of the way they're made, and they have many screwed-on sections, so it's easy for food to get underneath into your microwave. Like if you'd ever take your microwave apart, you'd be surprised how much food is actually inside of the microwave that gets in there, because when it gets hot, it'll expand, and the food will go in, and then it gets cool, and it contracts again. So therefore, they suggest that you don't use your microwave on Pesach unless you have a Pesach one. If you need it, if it's really a need for a microwave, so how you kosher it is as follows: is you wait 24 hours again. Now, the reason I keep saying this, waiting 24 hours, because according to halacha, to Jewish law, if you wait 24 hours after food has been absorbed into something, it's considered spoiled. That food is spoiled, and if it's spoiled food, it's not edible. So then it's like eating soap, right? It's not eating food. So therefore, you have to wait 24 hours, and then what you do is you clean it, right? Just normally, as if you're cleaning it any other day. Make sure there's no food in it anymore, and then you take a cup of water, you put it in there, and you set it long enough that the cup of water boils rapidly, and the inside of the microwave becomes covered with like a sheen of water from the steam. And then if you wipe it out, it's fine. Then
The size of the cup, anything?
Oh, you mean what kind of cup should it be? Well, it should be glass, or it should be unused plastic.
Not Pesach, or it
Will it
should
be
be
styrofoam?
And well, you could use styrofoam. What I mean is that you shouldn't take like a regular, you shouldn't take a coffee mug to do it, because that's going to be chametz, right? But a glass wouldn't be a problem, or a plastic cup, or a styrofoam cup. Those are all fine. It's just you want something that's not chametz, that's going to hold water, so that you can heat it up.
And how do you know if you need it? You just decide?
Well, basically, if somebody comes to me and asks me like a personal question, I don't know what to do. So I have to ask them questions to see to what extent is it really necessary for you to have a microwave. If you really don't have to have one and you can get by without it, the opinion is becoming more prevalent that you shouldn't use them on Passover. If you use it, no one's going to say you're not Jewish or something like that. There are many, probably the majority of Jews today, Orthodox Jews today, still kosher their microwaves for Passover, but it's becoming more and more common that more and more rabbis are finding issue with that and saying not to do it. So when I'm asked by people here, I really try to discern what the real need is, or if they're people who are growing and they're not that fully observant yet, so then I let them do it. But if there's somebody who's already there and they're fully observant, then I suggest they don't, unless there's really a need. There could be medical reasons. There could be lots of reasons that you might need a microwave. You need to have food. For instance, a baby.
Like kids.
Yeah, a baby. A baby more so than anything else, because the baby would need warm formula quickly. So that could be an example.
Yeah.
Then do you have to cover the round turntable thing, or you can just leave it?
Well, if it's a glass one, so by waiting 24 hours, then b'diavad it's fine. And one of the things that you can do is to wrap it in saran wrap, if it has a turntable inside. And you have to make sure that underneath it, that anything that's in there is cleaned. Okay. Cabinets, I sort of mentioned before, but it's like a refrigerator. Your cabinets, you have to take, if any cabinet you're going to use on Pesach. So let's say you have cabinets and you have your chametz dishes in them now. You're going to take them out, like we used to do. My mother used to have this great idea. They take everything out of the kitchen and bring it downstairs, and bring everything of Pesach upstairs. Right? So there's not a real need to do that. But if you want to do that, so then any cabinet that you want to clean, you want to use on Pesach, you have to clean. So how you clean it is you take out anything that has chametz in it and you clean it. You look and see. Look inside, you clean it, you wash it down like you normally clean during the year. Nothing different than that. You do not have to put liners in. Like you don't have to put contact paper or liner into it. Many people do because they want to be extra special careful, but you don't have to. The reason I keep expressing things this way is not because I'm being wishy-washy. It's because Pesach is the one holiday of the year where it is normal to be extreme, right? If you're going to, a normal person is not extreme in Jewish law. A normal person tries to find a normative path, like the golden path to follow. But when it comes to Passover, because it's such a serious holiday as far as the repercussions of breaking it, so people are stricter on Passover than they are the rest of the year. So when I say, many people do this, but you don't really have to, what I'm saying is that if you want to be among those people who are stringent and who are trying to do their best and do beyond the letter of the law, then you would do that. And if not, it's perfectly acceptable to not put, liners or contact paper inside of it, as long as it's clean. Yeah?
Actually, I think you answered it, but if you're using like a certain cupboard where it's like you only want to use like let's say one or two, but it's like a long thing that you said at the top.
You mean because you're going to have other stuff in it?
Well, yeah. Well, not mine, but like...
No, because you're sharing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and right, that would be the same kind of thing. Yeah, the idea, it's pragmatic. You have to think about it. There are certain laws that maybe aren't so logical. But in general, you have to look at it and you say, these people are going to have stuff in here that is not going to be kosher for Passover. So what do I have to do to make sure my stuff doesn't come in contact with that? Right? You think about it that way, and then it helps you figure it out. It's just logic, right, in different cases. Yes?
If you have like a cupboard that has like 3 shelves, are you allowed to keep like your Pesach dishes, your chametz dishes on one shelf and then your Pesach stuff on one shelf? Or like the whole cupboard has to either be covered?
Well, it's preferable to keep separate cupboards, because you want to sell the cupboard that has the chametz in it, right? Because you have to sell the chametz and the place it's in. Right? But if you can sell a part of a cupboard, right? But the problems are a number of things. One is, if you have any chametz in that cupboard, even if you sell it, you're not supposed to see it. You're not supposed to come into contact with it. So if you're talking about a dish, so a dish isn't really chametz. Right? It has something inside the dish, but it's not really chametz. So it would be okay, but it's certainly not the preferred way. And if you would do that, you would cover that part of it, so that when you opened it up and you've got 3 shelves, 2 shelves have paper in front of it and 1 doesn't. That's really how you do it. It's the same thing with a freezer. If you were going to have to use a freezer that you have stuff in that is chametz because you sold it, so then you would have to cover the racks that have the chametz stuff, so that you can't see it, and you'd use a different rack. And you'd try to always use the top rack, so if anything falls, it will fall into the chametz rather than from the chametz. Okay?
One question?
Yes.
Dining room hutch?
So the dining room hutch would be like any other area of the house, which is you'd have to clean it out. If you're going to sell it, you don't have to worry about it. This
Do you
won't have
need to
no
cover it
chametz.
though? Do I need to cover the glass?
Oh, it all depends what's there. If you're not going to use it at all, and you have some type of way of making a sign for yourself not to absentmindedly go there, like what we do is I put a string.
Yeah.
I put a string on the handles, right? And that way I see the string, or if I don't even see it, I pull the string is attached to the next one, so I can feel the tension. So that way you won't open it inadvertently. That's all you're trying to do, is so that you become, if you're absent-minded or you forget, or you send somebody, go upstairs and get me that dish, and they go to the wrong place, they're going to know it's the wrong place, right? So that's all. But like for instance, we keep Kiddush cups and Havdalah sets in ours, right? So I'm not going to use them. So I'm allowed to leave them there just like it is, and I just put a little piece of tape on the door to remind me. So the house in general. So how it works with Pesach cleaning in the house is that there's an idea of, there's two things that we're trying to do. One is that you're trying to literally get rid of chametz that can be anywhere in your house. It could, depending who's living in your house, especially if you have children, chametz can be anywhere, and literally you will find it anywhere, and everyone's got great stories of the weird places they find it, because that's what kids will do, right? Kids and animals will put food anywhere. But that's one reason, and that's the basic reason you want to get rid of the chametz. The second one is there's an idea of the search for chametz. Searching through your house to rid for chametz is a metaphor for the idea that we are searching within ourselves to rid the chametz from our lives. So they're both important. You're not just looking for chametz literally to get rid of it, but you're also, the act of searching is a mitzvah. So therefore, one goes beyond the norm. Like for instance, if you have let's say outfits you're not going to wear on Pesach, if you're not going to wear them, then you have nothing to worry about. But people were very, very common will go into the pockets of every single outfit to make sure there's nothing in them, right? That you didn't put something in there. And there's a famous story that they always say about the guy who he puts on his kittel, right, the white coat he wears at the Seder, and he reaches into his pocket on Passover night as he's going to the Seder, and he pulls out a piece of cake. It's been there since he broke Yom Kippur, and he was eating cake and absentmindedly stuck it in his pocket, and he never looked. Right? So he said, what can I have inside my kittel? I wear it on Yom Kippur, you can't eat. I wear it on Pesach, and you can't have chametz. So what could be wrong with my kittel, right? But he found out. So one should do the extra mile when it comes to this. So that means you check pockets and you do things like that. And you look in places that are absurd, and that's part of the process. But when it comes down to the actual searching, where you are trying to find chametz, so there's certain boundaries and certain things that to keep in mind that the halacha talks about. So a few of these are important, like books. For instance, if you have books in your house that you use, like Sfarim, like Torah books, and you are not careful throughout the year, and there's no reason that you have to be, but to not eat around the books. So then, in order for you to use those books for Pesach, you have to check them. You have to go through the books and check them. So for instance, let's say you have a chumash of 5 books of the Torah, right? And when you get to Pesach, you're in the book of Vayikra, the 3rd book, right? So you could use that book anytime during the year, and if you're not careful, like I do, I get up very early in the morning, and I bring Sfarim to my table. Let's say, Shabbos morning, like 5 o'clock, I'll get up and I'll learn. There's nobody around, but I'll have something to eat. It's really like nighttime still, right? And I'm not careful. I don't think, there's crumbs in there. I know I got crumbs all over the place, so it's certainly inside of my books. So the only way I could use that book would be to actually check it. Checking it basically means you open it and you shake it, right, to get stuff out of it. You don't have to do that to all of your books because you're not going to use all of your books. So you have the book of Bereshis, for instance, in your 5-book chumash, the first book you're not going to use since we're already on the 3rd book. So those don't necessarily you have to check, but the ones that you may use, you do. Yes.
My kids always contaminated with wine, and as well when we do kiddush for bread, we touch the same fingers, we touch siddur. Could we use the same siddur on Pesach?
As long as nothing can come out of it. Like if you have wine stained, that's not a problem. But if you have crumbs that are in it, then you couldn't use it. Okay? There's a custom that people have to buy a new siddur every Erev Pesach, or before Pesach, because the big problem is not the siddur, is the benching. Now, when you use Birkat Hamazon, for sure, your books have food on them or in them, right? And it's not worth it to go through them all, especially if you have a lot. So to either buy one especially for Passover, or you buy yourself a siddur and you use that siddur. Another one that I use all the time is I just use the Haggadah. Right? My Haggadahs are kosher for Passover, so I just use the bencher in there. You just have to think about what you're doing, so you don't say sections that you don't need to say. Right? But that's a way around it. So that's books. Closets are the same idea. Even though you probably don't go and hide in your closet and eat Oreos, but there may be someone in your house who does, and you do need to check your closets. So the same way. Toys is a very common problem. Kids are always eating and playing with toys. So if you're going to use a toy have a toy out on Pesach, you have to check it and clean it, because it's to not have comments on a toy it's hard to believe. Right? So you're going to have that. A high chair is impossible to clean thoroughly. So really, you should not use the same high chair. If it's a hardship to get another high chair if you need one, or to use another one, or to not have one for a week, so then you have to clean the entire thing. You have to where the baby sits, right, and the cushions and underneath the cushions, and you have to cover the tray. You can't use the tray. You have to put contact paper or aluminum foil on the tray that's closed and like taped to it, so that the child can't pull it off so easily. If they do pull it off, you just replace it.
Where the child sits, you just have to clean it though?
Yeah, but thoroughly. You have to take the cushions out and underneath. Yeah, if it's washable, you wash it, but the seat itself you have to clean. It's so a high chair is so dangerously full of things that they say it's preferable to get another one. It's one of the only things in all of the objects that it actually says that. Right? Is that this stuff for a baby? So you just keep that in mind. But if you can clean it, and you're sure you've gotten rid of it, and you cover the tray, then you're fine.
How thoroughly do you clean it if you're going to sell it?
Well, if you're not okay, in general,
things that you're going to put away.
Okay, in general, you have a mitzvah to do a search of your house, right? So, but you don't have to search everything if you're going to go away and sell your house, right? But you have a mitzvah still to at least one room to check and to do a search in that room, and then you can sell your house and leave.
No, not, sorry, I wasn't asking if you're leaving. I'm saying if you are going to buy a new high chair, what do you do with the old one?
You can just put it away. You can, you'd want to get rid of any, but if you want to get rid of any obvious food that's in there, but you don't have to clean it to the same extent because you're not going to use it. So if there was chametz in there, you sold it, right? But it's preferable not to have chametz, even if you sold it, right? They have chametz where you might not know where it is. So you would check it and you would clean it normally, like you would normally clean on a Tuesday, to make sure there's nothing in it, and then you'd put it away. Yes?
Okay, what about dry cat's food? My cat eats just Whiskas, dry.
Okay, pet food is a real problem, because pet food is almost entirely chametz. And well, no, they have some that aren't. But
They call the vet for tea, something else. She prefers to be hungry or die.
well, sadly,
Nothing.
there's no out that would let you serve chametz to your animal. You can't. There's no way to do it. To be able to actually serve your animal chametz, because you own the animal and you're benefiting by the animal eating the chametz.
Can you give your animal to a non-Jew?
You'd have to really sell it. It'd have to be a real sale. I mean, it's a real sale of your animal. So that
you can't give your animal.
It's your animal. Somebody else is giving chametz to.
The non-Jew is also not allowed to give it to your animal.
Right, unless it's their cat. Right. There are, in most cases, I'm not sure if this book says it, but in most cases there are chametz-free animal food. If your cat is extremely particular, you'd probably have to look into it like one-on-one. We'd have to talk about it. But in general, you will find ones, even if you just give them a can of tuna fish, you'll find something that they can eat.
Star K, and she has just to Google cat dog food for Passover. Comes up.
So there, you've got some.
Yeah, Google.
If you own it, if you own the food, then you can't. Then you have chametz on Passover. So and if you use it and you don't own it, then you're stealing. right?
Okay.
Because, see, what happens like this, let's say you sell your chametz, but you're still going to use it, right? So one of two things has happened. Either you actually sold your chametz and you're stealing from the non-Jew, or you didn't really sell your chametz. It was a facade, and you didn't really do it, and therefore you still own it. So that's why it's very serious when somebody uses the chametz on Passover with the illusion that they sold it. Because, like, if you go to a store and the store sells their chametz, but they still sell the chametz, right? Like, they have supermarkets. You can go in there and they'll have a sign, "We sell our chametz," and they're still selling chametz. So they're doing is they're selling chametz that doesn't belong to them, right? Or they didn't sell it. They say they did, but they didn't. One of those two is the reality, right? Therefore, when you go to a store that says that they sold their chametz, if it's a Jewish-owned store, so then they can't sell it during Passover. They literally have to stop selling chametz because it's not theirs, right? Yes?
Could you, like, if you had someone who wasn't Jewish, could they come and, like, bring their own cat food and put it outside on your...
No, because it's benefiting you. Because your animal eating is benefiting you. So you can't.
You literally have to sell the animal.
You have to find food that the animal will eat that isn't chametz, and there are
But you
animals.
can't sell the animal, right?
But if you're really selling them, I mean, it has to be a real sale, not like, I'm going to sell them to you, and he's still going to stay in my house, and we're still going to. It has to be a real sale. It's a much better way. A much better way is to find kosher for Passover foods. Because that's for real. There are ones. They may not prefer it, but you're only talking about a week,
What
right?
about fish? Can you give them the fish food? You know that week fish food, you put it in and it feeds them for a week?
It would be the same thing because you're getting usage from it. Right? There are kosher for Passover fish foods. In other words, they don't say they're kosher for Passover, but they are. Right? In fact, originally Hart's Mountain, the company that made a lot of fish food and bird food, were owned by Orthodox Jews, the Hart's family, and everything they had was kosher for Passover. If they don't own it anymore, I don't know if it's changed, but a lot of it is. Yes?
We talk about selling actual comics. Like, what if you have Play-Doh, which is real comics? Like, do you put that away and sell it, or do you have to get rid of it?
Okay. All right, we can talk about that for a minute. So, the idea of selling chametz is really not the norm as far as Jewish law is concerned. Our generation and our parents' generation, everybody sells their chametz. Right? It's almost everybody you've ever met who has any religious leanings will sell their chametz. I will have 500-600 families will sell their chametz here, and we don't have that many people here. So it's lots of people do that. It's really halacha originally created selling your chametz for people who owned breweries, they owned large bakeries, where it was an enormous loss for them to have to get rid of all that chametz.